let's find out what VeVe's head of content has to say. We talk about how VeVe is aiming to become the gold standard in digital collecting, why he believes that he is at the exactly right company to be part of this changing collecting scene. We also discuss what he envisions for VeVe in the future and much more. If you're into VeVe, digital collecting, or just curious about the new era of collecting, then this interview is one you don't want to miss. So, welcome, Corey. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jan. I am glad to get to sit down with you. I've been enjoying your videos. You have the most interesting guests. I don't know why you brought me on, but excited to see what we talk about today.
I mean, I totally know why I got you on, because I think there are a lot of interesting things we can talk about. But let us just start with yourself. How would you describe yourself in a couple of sentences to a person who you never met before? What would you like to tell that person about you?
Well, I guess I'm Corey. I'm a family man, professional nerd, and I get paid to talk about comics and toys. It's the coolest job in the world. So that's pretty much me. If you want the shortest version, that's pretty much it. Whenever I tell someone that, it usually opens up a pretty big conversation, though.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that, because I mean, most of the people are, I guess, wondering what that's about and sometimes surprised, right? And how does this conversation go on then? What do you tell those people about your job?
It depends on who I'm talking to. You know, I've got two boys, one's 10, one's 5. And so if it's in the context of kids, you know, the way you kind of describe who you are and what you do, gets to my son loves to tell everyone, you know, that his dad gets to play with toys and make animations and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. It kind of just depends on who I'm talking to. If I kind of know that they're a nerd, or we bump into a conversation where we're talking about the latest Superman movie or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
kind of lets me get to whip out the phone and show them cool stuff and all of that. But
Yeah.
if I'm talking to like a higher level person, you know, a professional, then I kind of lean into the sort of more corporate things that we do. Because, you know,
Yeah.
VeVe's a business, you know, try to do things with best practice. So just kind of depends on who you're talking to.
Okay, so then that was a question I've prepared for at the end of the interview, but
Yeah.
now we are here. So let's assume you're talking to a person who is a fan but doesn't have any touch points with digital collecting. What do you tell them about VeVe, and what would be like your favorite collectible on VeVe that you pull out and show them directly to convince them to start collecting here?
If I'm talking to someone that doesn't know anything at all about digital collecting, I usually ask if they're into video games of
Mm-hmm.
any kind. Do they play like mobile games? Like maybe they're a PC game. I'm a gamer, you know, so that's like an easy common ground. And if that's not really their thing, typically collecting's so ingrained into the human experience. Like I guess this is like a deeper conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, everyone collects something whether they realize it or not. And you know, my mom collects cooking books. She doesn't realize it, but I mean, she's got a
Okay.
library of cookbooks.
Yeah.
You know, and when a certain chef that she likes releases a book, she gets it at the library and then immediately buys it. She collects it. She would never say she's a collector,
Mm-hmm.
but she collects.
Yeah.
And I find that to be pretty true with just about anyone. Usually people have something they're passionate about and they like to obtain it. And the whole reason we collect, I think, is it gives us a lot of comfort. And so people choose how they display and how they collect based on what they're trying to get out of it in terms of how it makes them feel. So for me, as someone that this is my studio space and I have all this stuff behind me, and
Yeah.
I have the stuff behind me. So whenever I make a video, it's behind me, but it also makes me really comfortable. I have, you know, Legos that I've built with my son on my desk. Like all of these things have a intangible emotional valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I'm talking to someone about that, I try to understand who they are, where they're coming from, what their passions are. And typically there's something that we have on VeVe that's probably going to appeal to them.
Yeah. Let me jump in real quick there.
Hmm.
I mean, collecting and, for example, your background is the perfect example. I mean, it's also social signaling, right?
Yeah.
Like clothes are, like cars are, whatever. Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's because we're all looking for that connection. I think that's a really unique thing about VeVe. Like, I grew up, I was born in 85. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, whenever I think back on being young and collecting, I think about playing Magic the Gathering with those cards that I shouldn't have been wrapping with rubber bands and playing
Mm-hmm.
on, the ground
Yep.
with. I think of Pogs. I think of all the things that I collected whenever I was a kid. And a part of that is I knew whenever I got to school, my friends were going to be doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so maybe I wouldn't be super into something. Like, I remember going through a yo-yo phase whenever I was a kid and then collecting yo-yos because
Yeah,
all of
I,
my
I
friends
I had
collected
those
yo-yos.
those Beyblades, those
Beyblades, that's another one.
spinning. Yeah. That was a big thing in my childhood.
And I think whenever we grow up, the ability for you to, like, as you say, signal to other people that you have passions and things that you like goes away. And you kind of get a little more pigeonholed. Maybe you work a job that's very professional. It's not going to be okay for you to be talking about the latest Star Wars movie.
Mm,
But what I really like about VeVe is the accessibility of it being on your phone. So whenever you're having that conversation, maybe you're meeting up with colleagues after work, you're cutting loose, drinking a few beers, whatever you're doing. And, they dip into talking about a movie or talking about a thing. Your entire collection is in your pocket,
mm-hmm.
and it just makes it so easy to pull something out and just put, an X-wing on the table and be
Yeah,
like, check this out. Like, how cool is this? Because
yeah,
there's the collectability of VeVe, which is cool, but it's also being able to show things off in that AR environment, which for me has been the easiest way whenever I need to explain to someone or someone asks me what I do, because digital collecting is still kind of a complicated job, like whenever you're trying to explain that to someone that doesn't have
yeah.
any idea. But whenever you show someone something in AR, they're like, oh, okay, I get this. And then you can be like, well, there's only 500 of these and there's 3 versions of it. And one, is exceptionally limited. And then they get the scarcity concept of what we're doing. So yeah, it's like kind of depends on the situation, who you're dealing with. But yeah, there's lots of easy ways to kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
And it makes collecting fun. It makes it fun to broach the subject with people.
Yeah. And also really interactive, right? I mean, there's also a lot of room for Vivi to improve on the social and interactive aspect in a wider manner, I would say. But I guess you guys are working on it, because I mean, we've seen so many interviews where, like, the words gamification and all that came into play. And yeah, we have some kind of a gamification at the moment with these challenges. I love the challenges, even though I have no
I'm
chance
with you.
on, honestly, no chance. But I love the fact that there's more little gamification in there. But I guess over the long time, you guys probably work on more ways to interact with other users and more gamification, right?
For sure, for sure. And what you got to keep in mind, and I've talked about this in other conversations, but what we do at VeVe hasn't really been done ever in the way that we're doing it.
Hmm.
This industry, this niche that we've generated and we're sort of the leaders in, never existed before us. I mean, there were shades of it. You could get skins in a video game, things like that, but an actual premium digital collectible with limited editions, globally releasable, global marketplaces. And so whenever you combine that with the IPs that we have, it becomes a larger conversation for not just us, but for them.
Yeah,
And how do we show that off? What are the rules for making? You see our AR videos that we've been releasing. You could pop one up on screen while we're
yeah,
talking. Ben Dixon, Mr. Falcon, just does a fantastic job on those. But we couldn't just do those. We couldn't just be like, let's do AR videos and release them, because of course, everything that we have is an IP that we're licensing from, usually a large brand like a Disney, a Marvel, a Lucasfilm. And so some conversation needs to happen over the legality of that. Can we do that? What are the
Yeah.
rules for it? And whenever you look at what is the most closely related product, so for a digital statue, the most closely related product would be like this Darth Vader over my shoulder, just a physical toy. And for a comic, obviously a comic, right? The rules for how you advertise and promote those things physically have existed for more than half a century.
Hmm.
It's a well paved
Yeah.
path. You know, if you're working at Hasbro and you've licensed a new Darth Vader collectible that you want to be releasing,
Yeah.
the
You know
packaging,
already
yeah,
what's allowed to do and what is not. Hmm.
it's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy. But for us, it's not that easy because some of the things that we're trying to do literally have never been done before in the history of the industry. We
Yeah.
are figuring it out for the first time. And so it's been interesting and it's been a lot of fun. It's been really rewarding for me because, you know, whenever I got hired initially, it was just to make talking head kind of content videos, which was a hard thing to do initially. And we've gone from that to being able to do actual promotions, AR features. We have the VeVeVerse experience. We're figuring out the best ways to advertise and promote that within the bounds of the new rules that we're generating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a really exciting time right now at VeVe, especially for a lot of the people that work on my team, as we're getting to sort of flex into new areas and establish new roadmaps and style guides and all of that good stuff.
If you're new to VeVe and haven't signed up yet, it would really mean a lot to me if you do so with my affiliate link. Through that, you are not just supporting me, you also get 10 gems for free to kick off your digital collecting journey and grab your first digital collectible. And now, back to the video.
Yeah, I mean, I've told you off record, I mean, you guys leveled up the content game immensely over the last couple of months, and it's great to see, honestly. That's really, really impressive.
It was
I
one
want
of the most important things for me because whenever I first got hired, it was just as a content producer. And
Mhm.
so my job really was just to make videos to educate and entertain people about things that we're releasing. Because you can read a blog, right? And be like, oh, okay, so this is this character from Peely Fantasy. Oh, dogfight.
Yeah, he's protecting the home again.
Little companions. But whenever I got,
Give me a second.
yeah, you're good.
Fino! Sorry, man.
You're absolutely fine.
Hey, komm runter, Junge. Okay, sorry, man.
Yeah, that's no worries at all. I mean, I could do the whole thing. Whenever I first got hired, it was just to do basically like talking head videos to entertain and educate people about the product, right? And over time, as my role has shifted at VeVe, and now I'm the head of content, so I have the whole content team under me. I've always known because I've been collecting forever. Yeah, and I think if you've been collecting for a long time, you've just been inundated with advertisements, magazine inserts. You've been in the Reddits, you've been in the Twitter groups, the Facebook groups, the Discords, the Telegrams. Like you get how to reach the people. And
Mhm.
so the biggest thing for me as I had moved into that new role was sort of redefining and reestablishing the way that we show off our stuff and
Yeah.
trying to create new rules and processes that we can get approved, like actually approved
Mhm.
via the licensor. Because there's a time there's a time commitment that comes with trying a new thing, you know, because it's not just well let's try a new video format and it takes 10 minutes and we submit it. Like it, it's not a yes you can do this thing or no you can not do this thing. It opens a conversation that's going to take a lot of hours, and so
Yeah.
we need to be really really direct and targeted whenever we're trying to do a new thing. But yeah, it's really good to see that things are expanding. Like we're getting to play a little bit more with how we're doing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. One quick thing, because you've mentioned like the closest thing right now to digital collecting skins in Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, whatever. And I think the great thing about that is, first of all, it's typically a more younger crowd, and a younger crowd who is already used to digital collecting and already like has a value attached to digital things, even though they are not NFTs and not scarce, etc. But I guess if you tap into those kind of demographics, you don't need to explain why something digital has value. And I guess that's like at the moment one of the biggest pain points when it comes to tapping in the existing collectors market. What's your take on that?
You know, it's interesting because my oldest son is 10 and he's been playing Roblox for a while now. So I'm very familiar with
Yeah.
Roblox. He is coding games in Roblox. That's like his big thing right now. But whenever he first started his Roblox account, it was around Thanksgiving. And so whenever he generated his account, they gifted him this hat that was like a turkey.
Yeah.
So like just imagine if you cut a turkey in a hat
Yeah.
in half and you put it on your head and its feet were dangling. And so that was one of the very first in-game things that he got. Now fast forward 2.5 years, birthdays, he's used his allowance, and he's bought Robux, the currency on Roblox.
Yeah.
And he spends it as quick as he gets it, right? Like I'll get him a gift card for his birthday, and within 3 hours, he spent every single Robux that was on there. And whenever I sit down, he's like, "Hey, Dad, check out this game or check out this level I'm building." He still has that turkey hat on 2.5 years later.
Okay, nice.
I go, why still the turkey hat? Like, you've bought all these different things and you still wear this turkey hat. And he goes, well, it's because no one has that turkey hat. Like, you only could have got that turkey hat if you started a Roblox account during that time period, and they've never re-released it.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to explain scarcity. You don't have to explain limited edition. It's built into the experiences that the next generation, they're already totally hip to. And so it actually eliminates, we've had to explain those things really to legacy collectors of an older demographic, because most of the people that we've got on the platform currently either started collecting on VeVe and they've used the physical world as the comparison. So they'd see a comic release on VeVe, and to understand it more, they would reference the only thing that existed to reference the physical one. And they'd go, well, in the physical world, that comic's worth this much money, and cased and graded by CGC, there's only 50 of them in the whole world. So this comic has a lot of value. But with the next generation, like that doesn't matter. Like the provenance doesn't quite matter quite as much as the scarcity, the limited nature of what it is. And so it's our job really to make sure that they don't forget the history of it, because that is what makes things collectible. The story, the like where it came from, why it matters. They'll get that whenever they get older and they kind of mature into the hobby. And I think that's another thing that I don't hear many people talk about is we talk about demographics, like your 40 to 50-year-olds that collect these kind of things, and your 20 to 30-year-olds and they collect these kind of things. But as a collector, we change. Like the way I approach the hobby now is different than how I approached the hobby whenever I was in my early 20s. What matters to me has changed. And so if you want to be the place where the world collects, which is what VeVe is trying to be, we need to not only understand the different demographics, but the different needs of each of those demographics, and what our responsibility is as the people who provide these products to make sure that we're giving the most value and education to them wherever they are in that journey. Whether you're a Gen Z that's just coming in and all you care about is limited edition, scarcity, time-gated events, or you're a 50-year-old who cares about a USPS stamp that released in 1890, and it's referencing this. Like, we need to make sure that we're covering from a content perspective. That's the challenge. The challenge is trying to create content that's going to appeal to a mass market, while also ensuring that we're providing unique content niches to each of them. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a fun.
I mean, it's a big
cool thing to
stretch,
talk
right?
about.
To reach like the younger generation, and then also the legacy collectors. But let us go back in time and talk about where collecting started for you. You maybe remember your first piece where you like, okay, I collect that now, because you told me earlier with the Magic the Gathering that was not collecting really, right? That was more playing a game and interacting with friends. But where like
Correct.
collecting really started for you?
Collecting started for me really young. So I was adopted whenever I was 4.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after I was adopted, a thing that I did that I bonded with my dad over was stamps and coins. My dad collected stamps and he collected coins. And so whenever he would go to antique shops or hobby shops, he would bring me with him. And so he got me into stamps because the stamp collecting niche is one of the largest niches in the world with the most product, because
Mm-hmm.
every single country has stamps, you
Yeah.
know, so there's just so many of them. And so he would get me these huge encyclopedia books with, you know, it'd be like a thick cardboard paper and 2 kind of like flimsy little tissue papers,
Mm-hmm.
and it was broken into countries. And so the first encyclopedia I had was a collect by countries, like 1 year to 1 year. So it was like a 3-year span. And within it, you would look and there would be the empty slot where you put the stamp once you find it. So he would go and he would talk to them about really valuable things. You know, that's, to me at that point in my life, was boring, right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to know about the Delaware mint of the Susan B. Anthony, whatever. Like I just wanted to
Yeah,
hunt for
because you
things.
didn't get the significance back then. I mean,
That's it.
that's totally understandable as a kid, right?
And that's where Pokemon got it right? Gotta collect them all. Like that is
Mhm.
so, again, we talked about this earlier, like built into each of us is the desire to collect and complete. And so for me, that first encyclopedia of stamps was that for me. Like I'd flip through it and I could see the things that I had found from the certain countries
Mhm.
and the ones I would miss that I was missing. So whenever my dad would go into the shop, he'd be like, "Hey, my son has, you know, the encyclopedia is trying to figure. Do you guys have like a stamp bin he can rifle through?" And that's what would happen, right? Like, so he'd be at the glass counter doing the thing, and I'd have a bunch of cardboard boxes with just loose, like not organized, just like a
Mhm.
bulk bin of, and I would just be rifling through, you know, looking at each one, being like, "That looks like that's a kiwi bird from New Zealand. Like, I'm pretty sure I need that," you know, and you'd flip through and you'd match it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, that was kind of my first real entry into collecting, and it evolved because I kind of outgrew stamps. I don't think I outgrew them. My taste changed. And so as I got a little bit older, dad would go in for stamps and coins, and then I would see if they have comics.
Mhm.
And so they usually would have some, you know, bins of comics, depending on when the shop was and how small the area was. We're not talking case comics here. We're kind of talking just a bulk bin of whatever. And
Yeah.
I can remember at that point, the internet didn't exist. Like that's another thing that you need to keep in mind. Like whatever we talk about my collecting history is, access to information isn't what it was. So like I didn't have a phone with me that would instantly, I could type it in or take a picture of a comic cover and be like, what is this? And so my understanding of value is usually based on numbers, which is another interesting thing in terms
Mhm.
of VeVe, because, you know, people hunt after certain mints. Again, inherent to the hobby is the desire for specialized mints. So for me, any comic that was a number one comic had to be valuable, right? So
Mhm.
like anytime I would find a comic, no matter how beat up it was, if it said it was the first, I was like, I'm rich. Like I've
Yeah.
done it. Like I
Yeah, I
found,
got it.
you know, so
Mhm.
I'd buy it and then I'd go home. And at that point in time, it was going to the library to get the guide. I can't think of what the guide was, but there was a guide that had all the comics in it, and you could use that to reference value. And you know, it was always a loser. It was never an actual number one comic. It was like
Mhm.
the first in a 3-run series or something
Yeah.
like that.
But I
um
mean, you learn as you go, right?
that's it.
Because the people who watch my channel on a regular basis know I don't come from the collecting world, and this channel is, I mean, a really good source for me to be educated through guys like you who are in the collecting business for a long time, and I have a lot to learn. I mean, I go through that learning curve right now, as you said you've been to. Quick break, and thanks for watching this far. I want this channel to be a place for every collector, whether you're new or a longtime veteran, to discover something new. With every episode, I bring a new topic to the table, hoping to spark conversations and learn from those with experience. Here's my question for you today. What's the one collecting tip that changed everything for you? All right, guys. Thanks for helping everyone out by dropping your knowledge in the comments. And now back to the episode. You also mentioned like your collecting habits kind of have changed from stamps to comics and then into the digital realm.
Yeah.
How did that happen? What was like the initial spark that made you curious about digital collecting?
It was my friend Brian. And so at this point in my life, this was pre-COVID. I was in the military. And after I got out of the military, I met my wife, who then subsequently joined the military. And so she was on an aircraft carrier deployment that was 10 months long. So she was gone for 10 months. And at that point, my oldest son was 2 going on 3. And so imagine your significant other leaves for 10 months and now you're raising a 2-year-old by yourself. And so I found another guy who had a wife who was on the ship via spouse group. And he had a daughter that was the exact same age as Thor. And so him and I would hang out 3 times a week. He'd come over to my house. I had a gym in my garage, and him and I would work out while our kids would play. And we would basically just cry about how crappy life is because our wives are gone and we're raising these kids by ourselves. And he was, Brian is a poker player professionally, but he was also a Dragon Ball Z player. He was a Yu-Gi-Oh player, at a competitive level.
Okay.
And so him and I connected on that because I've played Magic the Gathering, I played Pokemon, I played Yu-Gi-Oh. And he also had a shop, an online eBay shop, because whenever you compete at a high level in, say, Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z back whenever it was competitive, whenever you'd win or place in a tournament, you would get tournament exclusive cards. So like the only way to get that card would be to place at the tournament, right? And so he built a shop around that, like where he would buy cards, but he also had all these exclusive cards that you could only get by being a player there or buying it from one.
Yeah.
And so he was super into the NFT space. He was a crypto bro through and through. And so I came from a physical space. Like I'm a guy that buys like gold bullion and coins and tangible things. I like tangible values. And so, but we connected on the card. So we would work out and he would try to convince me, this coin, I'm telling you, man, if you buy this, you're going to be filthy rich. And Brian, like I said, was a poker player, always in Vegas. And I was like, I don't know. Like I loved Brian. Like I still love him. He's such an amazing human, but I was like, I don't know about all this. And then he started talking about VeVe because Andre Jick at that time was talking about VeVe. And that's how he learned about VeVe. And he tried to convince me on VeVe. And I was like, explain it to me again. Invisible toys and comics, like I don't know, man, like how's it actually a thing? And he would explain like things are minted, there's blockchains, this and that. And then Star Wars was going to release via Golden Moments on VeVe, and he knew that was the button to push for me because I'm a Star Wars fan. Like I've loved Star Wars my whole life. Like I watched those VHS tapes to the point where whenever you'd put them in a VCR, you'd have to hit tracking on the VCR like 100 times. And I'd have to clean the tapes because I'd watched them so many times. Yeah. This is old school VHS for you younger people watching, which are super valuable now. Like if you find a Star Wars VHS sealed, like
honestly, I wanted to say that. I mean, comics and crypto currently go on that route, right?
Yep, it's smart. I love it. But Star Wars Golden Moments was coming, and Brian said it'll be the first time in the history of the blockchain existing that these collectibles there will only be one first time. This is it. These will be the first ones. There'll never be another first time event. And as a collector, like the first coin, the first stamp, the first comment, we've talked about this in this conversation. Like that is a trigger. Like you're like, oh, the first of, this is my only chance And so I went in on that, and I ended up getting R2D2 off the drop,
Oh,
which was
nice.
wild back then because it was real
Yeah.
hard to get anything. And Brian couldn't believe it. He was like gobsmacked. He was like, I can't believe
Yeah.
you got one on your first try. I was like,
I
they
got
probably made it easier because I'm a new user. I don't know.
I got 3 C3PO. That was also
Nice.
really cool. Yeah.
And so that started me into digital, but the first of wasn't enough for me because I'm a curious person. Like I've always been a curious person, and so I wanted to know more about what I had just purchased. Like I understood there was a value element because I had paid X amount and now it was
Yeah.
worth X amount, and I was like, oh, okay. Like
So let me say it like this. That was not the final aha moment for you then. That was like the first leap into the curiosity and down the rabbit hole,
that's it.
right? Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I'm I live where I was raised now. I've moved back to where I grew up. So I'm close to my family, and I'm a country bumpkin. Like I live out in the middle of the country. I was raised in the country. So I'm very cynical about new things. And
Yeah.
so despite the success of an R2D2 and, Brian thinking he's got me hook, line, and sinker, like I was still very curious and sort of not concerned, but I wanted to know more if I was going to keep buying these things. It was super cool, the AR element. I love that. So I started doing more research, and so when him and I would work out on like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we would talk about VeVe stuff now because now we had a new thing that we could connect on, right? Like another common ground.
Yeah, totally get that.
And he would be like, "Hey, like these designer con drops are coming." And I would be like, "What's designer con?" He's like, "It's like an art thing. It's like independent artists, da 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 da." And for me, I'm never gonna buy something if I don't know anything about it. Like that, it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I would spend some time figuring out who the artists were. And so the next time we worked out, I'd be like, "Yo, like you should, if you want to spend money, like you should go for this one. Like this artist, his stuff is only in Sotheby's and Christie's. Like it's selling secondhand out of auction houses legitimately. These are super small indie creators, so super cool. Like probably will be valued, but so for me, value was based on the story and the provenance, and like that's just how my brain operated. And so whenever we would work out, I'd kind of give him a rundown of what was coming, like, and it was just a thing we could connect on while we were working out and our kids were playing. And he was like, you should just get a camera, man, and just start making videos, because he also knew that I had a history doing that because of my time in the military. I was a journalist and I was a combat cameraman. So I had a bunch of real world experience doing that kind of thing. That's pretty much how I got into it. Like I turned on a camera. I made a channel called VeVe3, where I would tell you everything you needed to know about a drop in 3 minutes. That was like the gimmick.
Yeah, I remember
the gimmick
that
of the channel. I did it with my wife later. And that's sort of how I came into the space.
Yeah, and then later to VeVe itself, right?
For sure. A calculated decision. I truly believed if I did it right and I improved the quality of it every single time, and I didn't do any wild speculation, but I really stuck to what I felt was the spirit of what collecting is, and that is history and its story. It's generational information. It's what I love about my job. Whenever we release like an iconic thing that came into being like almost a century ago, like we have a big responsibility as a company to make sure that we're showing that IP some honor and reverence and sharing that story, because it will be lost. And we live in a weird time. Like I said, like whenever I got into collecting, the internet didn't exist. Now the internet does exist, and now AI exists. So the amount of information that exists is deafening. And the ease for people to create more information that may or may not be correct has just gotten easier. And so I think it's really important for us as a company to be a source of truth, where if you go to VeVe and we're putting out an article, a video, something about a product, that is fact. We can become a gold standard for collecting by being a source of truth that people can rely on. And I think that's becoming more and more important in an era where what is truth? How much of what we're reading and seeing is like from a human that cares and not just an AI output. So yeah.
And I mean that will just accelerate over the next couple of years, right? I mean, currently at a little side note here, but
Yeah,
currently, like on most of the AI generated videos or stuff, you can see it if you like closely look. But sorry, in 1, 2, or 3 years, you will not be able to see the difference. And that's also where I think the NFT technology becomes even more valuable to prove if something on the internet is true or not, or real or not. Yeah,
I agree. Verifiability.
yeah,
I
exactly.
love what AI can do. And we use AI and I use AI, but it is a tool. It shouldn't be the only thing you're using to generate whatever it is you're generating. You can use it to speed you along. You can use it to sort of help you refine ideas. But in my experience from a collectible space, if I plug in, what is the first appearance of Iron Man and give me a synopsis of the story, it'll hallucinate information that's factually inaccurate. And that's a
Hmm.
big problem in a collectible space
Yeah,
because the stories and the provenance of the things that we're releasing are what make it valuable, in addition to the scarcity and all of that stuff. But it's that story. That story really matters and it's got to be right. And so it's a slippery slope with that one.
yeah. And as you said beforehand, you guys are pioneering in this space, right? So, I mean, a lot of times you can, no, not a lot of times, but sometimes you have those who fought VeVe and Ecomi. And I mean, there are some points they are kind of right where I would say, yeah, okay, we can talk about that, because like the time where like some of those products you guys released were announced and all that stuff till they are really there, sometimes timelines get messed up. But I totally get that if you are in a field where your guys are pioneering and setting the standard and kind of trying to navigate through those new roles, right? Roles and rules, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, I get that. But back to the collecting space.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your opinion on what kind of challenges the digital collecting space needs to overcome to like really become mass market, and in the case of VeVe, like where the whole world collects. What is your take on that?
I have like a few takes on that, to be honest. And there's one thing about collecting and one thing about VeVe and one thing about business that is true is that you're typically never going to be an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
And what is an overnight success whenever we're looking at how long it takes for a business to become adopted and successful? And so you can look at all kinds of different business models that have existed. Amazon going from we're going to target books because books are the most widely consumed thing in the world and there's a book for everything. And now what is Amazon? Like the amount of time it took for them to get from literally a server in a garage to what it is now was a long time. And proof that it could work also took a long time, even with something as simple as the internet. Because we talked about this earlier, right? Like I can remember
Mm-hmm.
there not being internet.
Yeah.
So I can also remember people like David Letterman during the Late Show basically making fun of the concept of the internet, being like having Bill Gates on the show and basically trying to get Bill Gates to prove the legitimacy of the internet while
Mm-hmm.
being ridiculed, being like, well, there's radios, there's televisions. I can hit record on my VHS tape. Why would I want to be able to rewatch it on the internet? And
Yeah.
so there's an element of that to this space in terms of just staying in the space, continuing to do business, continuing to maintain partnerships with key partners, and proving that we're not here to trick anyone. And that's always been a challenge for us. And this, whenever we started the company, whenever David and Dan started this thing off, they started it during an NFT boom. And if you look at the NFT space in its totality, the average person outside of this space looks at NFTs as this is dangerous. Like people got
Yeah.
scammed, people
Yeah.
got tricked, people got, and so like
I
you
mean,
mentioned,
which they were in most cases.
and even huge companies did it. Like even companies like your Starbucks or your Budweiser that had sort of NFT projects never delivered on those projects
Yeah.
and quote unquote rug pulled people. So when massive businesses are failing at it, what about this company called VeVe that I've never heard of? Like, how real can that be? Like, so there's that element, and some of that can only be solved, like I said, just by continuing to do business correctly and never doing that, like never having instances where, you know, there's a headline how VeVe customers were scanned by the millions. Like that's just never happened. So one of it's just doing business over time and proving that we're legit, we're doing the right things, we continue to do the right things. But another thing is leaning into the thing that is untrusted. And so the NFT space for us, there's a reason why David always leaned into the idea that we're a premium digital collecting company and not an NFT company. And
which was right now in hindsight, right?
which was right now in hindsight. But a thing that you'll see that we're starting to do more and more of is we are going to start leaning more into the technology aspect of it, because one, we've never scammed anyone on anything, so there's no downside for us to do that. But like you mentioned earlier, the verifiability of our product is the edge. It's one of the edges. One of the edges that we have is the global nature of the business. If I wanted to send you, like if you bought one of the comics on the shelf behind me, I'm going to have to mail that thing to you. You're going to have to wire me the money. And there's a lot of chances for that to go wrong between us making that agreement on the internet and you receiving the thing and me receiving the money. Anyone that's bought anything in the collecting space this way probably has a horror story. And some of those horror stories are based on an accident. You know, I've received cards that I've bought that got destroyed in shipping. It's no fault of the seller. They packaged that thing right, but the USPS driver that had it in the back of the truck must have drove off a cliff with it or something. Like the thing was just destroyed. That's one of the values that we have that's unique. But another of the values is leaning into technology and the verifiability and the authenticity of the product. And so for us to lean into that, then we have to lean into some of those technology aspects that we've kind of been hesitant to lean into before. But there's really no downside for us because of the carbon neutrality elements. That's a big thing that we've experienced with partners is we don't know if we want to lean into NFTs because there's an overarching feeling from what and the companies we're talking to have the best data collection in the world, right? Like no one has more information on consumers than the companies we're working with. So whenever they say, we're a little concerned because a lot of people think that NFTs are destroying the whole world because of the carbon emissions. We can't be like, well, you know, we think like our data is not going to be as good as theirs. But baking in things like the carbon neutrality, which was such, again, David and Dan thinking ahead of the time that they started the company in. They started it during a boom, but I think they've always thought bigger. They thought larger roadmap. And so we have the opportunity and we'll be leaning into that more. And I talked about how one of the important things and one of the things that VeVe could be is a gold standard of information. We could also be the gold standard for education in this space, in the NFT and technology space. We could be a place that people reference as a source of truth. We just need to start doing that work, getting that information out there and establishing more authority and credibility. So I think those two things, one, continuing to do business over time correctly and proving that we're here to stay. Like this isn't a scam, this isn't a trick. Like we're going, this year is our 5-year anniversary in Las Vegas. So if you go to Las Vegas Designer Con, you're going to have a good time. We're going to have a booth there. We're celebrating our 5-year birthday. So all kinds of cool things are going to roll out. But we didn't get to 5 years by chance. Like we got to 5 years by not taking shortcuts, making sure that we're following all of the anti-money laundering rules and legislations, doing everything right. And so it's time for us to start leaning into that. We're building that history. We've got a decade of experience behind us. We need to start leveraging it more. So when someone's new to the space, they're coming into a space that has a ton of actionable information that's true and verifiable. I think those are the ways that we we increase adoption.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And also like when and if like the NFT bull run will come back, I mean there will be a hype phase again, probably a lot of people like go into NFT projects in general again, and I think then probably there will be a bear market again, or at least a down market, and like the people who really are here for collecting and for the community, they will stay till the next time. And I think that the community will definitely grow over time as well. And also you guys are leveling up and ramping up marketing, right?
Correct. And
Yeah.
everything's cyclical. Like no matter what you look at, whether it's collectibles, commodities, stocks, that there's a cyclical nature to everything. So will there be another NFT explosion boom? Maybe, maybe not. But I think we don't, as a company, I'm not sure we leverage into that. Like if we're banking on some unknown event to occur for to put our success on, that's not a good way of doing business. Like we
Hmm.
have engineered and we think about, if everything's stacked against us for the next 10 years, how do we still win?
Yeah.
That's how we think. And so, if there's a bull run, awesome. We'll leverage that to the nth degree. If there's not, fine. Like we still will win because everything we're doing is working towards that. Like we're not a 5-year project. We're about to be a 5-year project, but there's no finish line for VeVe. Like
Hmm.
ideally I retire from VeVe and there's generations of people that work here. VeVe just becomes a thing that exists, like a normal business, not
Yeah.
okay. And I wonder if collectors worry about that. And I think they do. Like, is there a time frame in which my collectibles still hold some sort of legitimacy or not? And from our perspective, we're going to be here indefinitely. There's no
Yeah.
end mark.
I mean, I guess it was today. I mean, not the day of when the interview comes out, but today in that term, I've put out a tweet on X that like said IP is king, because like in the future, like the whole worlds and characters can be prompted with a single text prompt, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I believe that IP and the IP Vivi has secured is just so important, and honestly, still to this day, amazing how David and Dan got all those IPs. I mean, that's crazy to think about, in my opinion.
And we ensure that we keep those IPs by not taking shortcuts, not taking big, huge risks that expose the IP holders and all of you that collect to that risk. And that's what allows us to maintain those relationships. We talked about AI, right? We talked about AI earlier. An interesting thing, look into Disney and Midjourney. I want to say it was Midjourney or Dolly, but because there's so many AI tools that allow people to quickly essentially steal intellectual property, they're taking actions against that. And
Hmm.
so AI, again, much like digital collecting, is a thing that's never existed. And so now all of the rules and legislations are going to come into play. But like you said, the one thing that I think will hold true, because the entities that have those IPs are so powerful in the sense that they have a century worth of building that they've done, so it's much easier for them to help the regulation of that. But one thing that will always be true is that your partner statue on VeVe is going to be an actual legitimate IP from Disney. And if some person uses AI to generate a bunch of partner statues, those won't be legitimate, right?
Hmm.
So it's another interesting thing. I'm curious to see how the space becomes the AI space becomes a little more regulated. It's such a tremendous tool, though. Like we've been using a lot of AI tools like AEO and GEO. I don't know if you're familiar with. Have you heard of
No.
SEO?
Yeah.
So SEO is just search engine optimization, and AEO is answer engine optimization, and
Hmm.
GEO is generative engine optimization.
Mm.
So sort of the gold standard. If you're making a video, Jan, and you want to make sure that people say it or see it, you should probably be understanding how YouTube's SEO works. So whenever you write your title and your description, it increases the chance that someone finds it, and you should
Yeah, I
probably
try
know.
to look for that, but still progressing and learning there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tricky thing, and there's also some best practices, like if you post your video on private for 24 hours in 2025, it indexes easier whenever you actually.
Yeah.
So those are SEO practices. Those are ways that a search engine is going to find your stuff. But with the advent of AI, people aren't going as deep into, if I'm doing a Google search, I might just use the AI snippet at the top, and that's the end of my search. That's the end of my journey. And so
Yeah.
for us, what we've been trying to understand is the AEO and GEO implications of content, which is why now Gemini, ChatGPT, a lot of those LLMs, those large language models are referencing VeVe stuff. Because whenever we're putting out articles, videos, we're tagging images, we're using those best practices to ensure that these AI models are referencing VeVe as a source of truth and information. It ties into what I was talking about earlier. VeVe could be and should be a gold standard for information in this space. But if we're not making content that's being utilized by what people are searching with right now, then we're optimizing for something people are going to not be using as much. Because Google has Gemini, right? Like they've plugged Gemini right into their search engine. So it's not like they're scared of AI, they're leveraging it. So yeah, it's a tremendous tool. And I think if you stay hip to what the limitations are, where to leverage it, I mean, you'll set yourself up for success. We're seeing a large amount of success in terms of site visibility, new people on the website, people spending more time on the website than they ever have. Just massive. It's been so good for my team because, I got to report my numbers to the bosses.
Yeah. And
week on
everyone
week.
is hyped.
Yeah, so it's really nice to sit in a boardroom and be like, so this week, using the new tools that we're applying, we've seen like 125,000 more impressions over the course of a single week, which is the largest. That is the largest week on week gain that we've had in the last 16 months, right? Like it's really cool to be able to share numbers like that, which is a testament to my team, because they are, I've got some really amazing people on the content team, and they really are they've dug their heels into the space, and they love collecting, and they really love the nerdiness that goes into content, which is, it's an exciting time for me.
Great to hear that. But on the topic of AI, I don't know if you can talk about it, but there were like interviews, or maybe it was just one interview, space, whatever, where David was like, okay, maybe there would be, or wouldn't it be cool? I guess it was more like this. Wouldn't it be cool if in the collectibles there was a specific Darth Vader AI, so you could interact with that character? Is that something to think about? I guess he mentioned it one time, but
that's really a David question more than a content question.
No
so
worries.
I can really only speak towards content. Now, I do know that David talks to all of our licensors weekly, and so I'm sure all of them. You just be crazy in this day and age to not be looking at what AI can do for you in terms of enhancing features. Whether it is most companies now, whenever you're doing customer support and you're talking to a chatbot, they're all AI chatbots at this point. It's going to be, it's an interesting, like I could talk all day about AI, and I spend a lot of time of my day talking about AI. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that, because again, I liken it to the advent of the internet. And again, I can remember people being really against the internet, really for the internet. And I feel like the same thing's going to be happening with AI. In terms of mass adoption, mass rejection, and then it just becoming a thing that exists alongside of everything. We don't even talk about it anymore. Like my son, who's 10, AI is just going to be a normal part of his life, and it's not even going to be a question. Like it's just going to be a standard thing. So I think what we're going to experience here in the next probably 5 to 10 years is what David's talking about, and that is understanding what are the rules, what are the guidelines, and what are these IPs. Because at the end of the day, if we're talking Darth Vader, who's that? That's Lucasfilm. So Lucasfilm's going to decide what they want to do with that, and we'll leverage whatever it is that they're doing, because that's our job. Our job's to represent the IPs that we have on the platform to the best degree possible. That's how we've had a relationship with Marvel and Disney for as long as we've had, right? I would love that, because I'm such a fan. Like, like anything Star Wars, yes, please.
I can see you talking to Vader like for days, and then if I mean your wife isn't in the military right now, right?
No.
So okay, but that would be a great tool for the 10-month when she was gone.
Absolutely.
Okay, let us talk about VR and AR. What is your view on that? How will this evolve? Because currently we can use the AR features with our collectibles on the phone, and that's nice. That's a cool way to interact, but that's not the end of that technology.
So with AR and VR, the best person to have on your channel for that is going to be Dan, because that's Dan's baby as COO. And I think what Dan was hoping for, and I think we're all hoping and waiting for, is some company to normalize AR and VR experiences in a more legitimate way. And so AR and VR, for the most part, outside of games, so like your Pokemon Go that uses AR, is just a standard part of their experience. And also to track geocaching data as part of the largest collection. I don't know are you familiar with that? Like what Pokemon Go did with tracking, where people basically in Pokemon Go, you use your phone to locate Pokemon in the real world
I know
and
the
cache
game.
them, right?
I know the game, yeah.
And so because everyone's walking and has that on, they were able to develop map systems, because every person walking is basically creating like a geo-track. And so Niantic leveraged all of that data to create one of the most comprehensive, detailed, like on the ground location systems that exist. So it's like a cool thing. But I think what we're looking for is mass adoption, and we're looking for that technology to become cheaper and more accessible. Anytime we see a company like Google or Meta doing showcases where they're featuring a new glasses or goggle solution, we're so invested in that. Like we all, as like Dan, David, myself, a bunch of other people, we've got chats that are dedicated to that. We're sharing all the latest information. But I think what we're waiting for is it going to be is VeVe the company that's going to get the whole world to buy off on AR and VR technology? Like,
probably
is that
not?
If we're talking about where do we spend our time and our effort and our money, do we think we're going to change the way the world interacts? Are we going to convince people, ditch your phone, grab your VeVe contact lenses and view the world? And like, we really need some company, whether that's Google, Meta, and that is why David talks to them. Like David, I'll go to have a meeting with David, and he's got the day blocked out because he's talking to Google. He's talking to Apple. Like he's talking to those companies. And the second that we see some major movement, so in the meantime, you can do VR in the VeVeVerse. We've got AR built in. From a content perspective, I think it's the single most valuable thing that gives our collectibles tangibility to people that don't understand digital collecting. And if you've gone to a convention, anyone that's watching, if you go to a convention, you go to the VeVe booth, you'll see firsthand people kind of not getting what we're doing. And then they see themselves standing next to Superman, then they see themselves, then they're like, oh, okay. So it's exactly like the stuff I collect, just an augmented reality version of it, or a virtual reality. And so in terms of how do we promote that and what we have, we're doing a ton of work. We mentioned earlier, I talked about it earlier, Ben Dixon, Mr. Falcon, just doing phenomenal work with his AR promos, which wasn't an easy thing to do. I just had a meeting with Disney yesterday where they were talking about how pleased they are with the AR videos.
Oh, nice.
And they're pleased with that partially because those AR videos on our Instagram are one of the most performative contents that we do. People get it, like they see it. Like you don't have to do, we have a lot of things in our content bucket that we can do, right? Like we could do a really high level promotional video with texts, coming soon, and then like some pans of the collectible and dramatic music and some smoke going. We can do that, or we can just do an AR video. But the nice thing about the AR video is you can do that. Like nothing that we show in an AR video, you couldn't just do yourself with your own phone. Like you could recreate that. And that gives it value and it gives it use case. And so AR to me right now is one of the, if not the most important things that we do. So I feel really good that we're covering that in a better way. Kid Arcade, if you're watching, I know he always mentions this in his videos. I love him, by the way. I met him at one of my very first conventions in Designer Con, Anaheim. And whenever I met him, he did a break dance right after. He's like, Corey, and then he did a break. I was like, oh my gosh. But he talks about in his videos a lot, like, why doesn't VeVe do more AR? Like that's how people understand these things. And that was a process. It was a process we had to go through with the licensor to figure out what are the rules, what are the guidelines, what can we do, what can't we do, how do we do this? And so that's locked in. So now I'm turning my sights to the VeVeVerse. And so I'm working with some really awesome people like Josh from Collectors Gone Digital is one person that I talk to regularly, like at least once a week.
Great guy.
Yeah, super great guy. Really talented. We have so many talented VeVeVerse builders like Master. There's just so many. I'd list them all, but I'd leave one out and I'd feel bad. But we're trying to find better ways to show off the VeVeVerse experience. But that for me is a niche inside of a niche. Like AR is accessible to anyone with a cell phone. And that makes it really easy from a promotional standpoint and getting someone new to get it. The VeVeVerse is kind of like a step inside of a step. Like you almost need to be into VeVe, collecting on VeVe, and then also be either from a gaming background, a building background. You need to have some sort of background that's going to make it to where you're going to want to go into that space. And so part of that conversation, we're going to be doing a business update this week. So hopefully the week after this week, we'll have that information out there, which is going to have a VeVeVerse update in it and some business updates overall. But it's a thing that Dan's been looking into is accessibility, because as the VeVeVerse exists right now, there's so many amazing tools for people to do so many amazing things, but we need more turnkey options. And so we've done that with like the VeVe Villa. Like we've done some prefabricated spaces where you don't have to think too much. You have to do too much. You don't have to be very technically savvy. And so it's a balance. And I think we're going to have to leverage the creator economy. David talks about this a lot. You'll hear him talk about it in a lot of interviews. The creator economy, what he's talking about there is leveraging people who love this stuff as a third party extension of the platform, which is a really smart way of doing things.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
The future, I think, it was a Ready Player Me future. I think a lot of us thought that's what it was going to be, but a lot of that was contingent on your Meta, on your Google launching like a really successful heads up, glasses system.
I mean, to add on that, I've listened to an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, and he was like, in the early 2030s, he thinks the wearables will be mass market ready, and
that's what I think.
Kind of shift from the phone more to the wearables, like we did from the PC to the phone, right?
That's it. That's truly what I think. And the good news is, we'll still be here in 2030 because, like we talked about, like there's no finish line for this company. Like it's not like we don't have a 10-year plan. We've got like a 20-year plan, a 30-year plan. Like this company is going to be here. And so as technology adapts, we're ready to adapt to it. And that's why we have a VeVeVerse space, and it's very much what Dan calls an MVP. If you're an American and you hear MVP, you're thinking most valuable player. But in the business world, MVP is most viable product. So it was the best thing that we could release in a timely manner that gives you a base experience of what it's going to be. But that experience very much is ready to be adapted and applied to hopefully a mass adopted technology in the very near future. I hope so. Man, I'd rather do a meeting like this with you, Jan, via like a VR.
Yeah, I mean,
like imagine how much cooler this conversation would be if we got to be in the same space together digitally.
Definitely. And what I would love to do in the future, because we talked about Josh, Collectors Gone Digital, he is currently building one of my spaces where I would love, where I would love to host AMAs and all that kind of stuff. So maybe next time when we both
that'd be awesome.
we could do it if the technical capabilities are there, because I think that's at the moment a big constraint of the VeVeVerse. I mean, when I run it on my laptop, I can build. There's no problem. But as soon as I drop more than like 20 collectibles in there, it starts lagging. And I think that's something you guys have to. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure you took a look at it.
For sure. And weekly, it's a pain point that Dan's talking about. We're looking at an interesting thing about our product, and by product I mean digital collectibles on VeVe, is there's a process. This is a deep cut, Jan, so forgive me if I go on a tangent here.
No,
But
go ahead.
whenever our artists make these models, the model's huge. Like the 3D model is massive. It's a massive, gigantic file. And so that initial concept, that initial product, then has to be converted multiple times. And different tools and techniques and technologies have to be applied to it to reduce that from a 5 gigabyte beautifully modeled thing down to a much smaller size in terms of memory capacity.
Yeah.
That way it can be loaded into augmented reality. If you open up on your phone doesn't get to be 500 degrees and explode in your hands.
Mhm.
Like, so there's some limit. So initially, models really just needed to be converted to be compatible with iOS and Android AR capabilities. But now the models also have to be converted and made compatible with a VeVeVerse experience.
Yeah.
And so there's this pipeline for the product that's still currently being refined. And how do we optimize these collectibles, these digital representations of the IP, to be more compatible, more streamlined, and more fluid? And so that is a thing that's happening on a weekly basis, where we're continuously testing new techniques, new processes, putting it in the VeVeVerse, seeing if it made a big impact, if it didn't make an impact. And beyond that, just the way the VeVeVerse is constructed in general, the textures and the materials that compose the objects, the way the objects take up space, the LOD, like the load times for things within proximity, like all of those things are just constantly being tweaked on a week-to-week basis while it's still in this MVP process. So the VeVeVerse very much is still a WIP, a work in progress.
Yeah.
The final version is going to be a lot different than what it is right now. And if you talk to Dan,
There will
Dan
never
has
be
the
a
biggest
final
dreams
version,
for the
I guess.
VeVeVerse. Like Dan's dreams of the VeVeVerse are really, really next level. And I think it was hard, and it's a credit to him for rolling it out. We waited so long to roll that thing out, and it caused a lot of heartache for everyone involved, including all of you watching, which we've apologized for in the past. I'll apologize for it again. And a big part of that was Dan feeling confident and comfortable and happy with what we were releasing. So the way it exists right now isn't quite Dan Crothers' dreams. He envisions a better thing, and it will be. It's just a thing that's just going to consistently require more and more work and more process. But the other thing that could throw that into flux would be if, like we were talking about, like if Meta or Google or whoever rolls out some sort of experience tied to some sort of wearable technology that actually gets mass adopted. I mean, who knows what will happen then? It could be a quick conversion.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great. That sounds great. And as I said, I think currently the VeVeVerse is a good first step. I mean, that was what you just said. I mean, there's so much room for improvement, and I'm really looking forward to the VeVeVerse in 2030.
Me too.
That will be amazing.
It is weird. It's weird to think we're about to hit a 5-year anniversary of the company, but a lot of things have happened in 5 years. When Dan and David started the company, there wasn't even a marketplace, and like you couldn't even transact with each other. So a lot of stuff's happened in 5 short years.
So besides the technologies we've already talked about, are there any technologies that could shape or influence the future of digital collecting, especially in the VeVe collectibles space that you're looking at?
For sure, for sure. It's a thing that David's very, very interested in. David's always going to conventions, and he's going to crypto conventions, and he's going to sort of trade conventions like Trading Card Game. He was just in Chicago, I want to say last week or the week before, at a huge trading card convention. And whenever he goes to those, he's asking different licensors what they're doing digitally to see if there's any cross compatibility or potentials for us to do something similar or work directly with them. And so there's a lot of technologies that he's basically exploring. And whenever they think about that, they got to think about how easy it is for us to actually action that. So are we going to have to rebuild, the back end of the platform to compensate for this? Or is this a thing that we could onboard next week and just immediately start doing? And so there's a lot of interesting concepts that I've heard. And then also there's a lot of things that people have been asking for and kind of do themselves that we've always wondered, can we include that as a feature? Like digital signing would be an example of that, potentially a thing that we're exploring. Because right now, the only way to get a signature on your product is literally to draw on a screenshot of it, right? It'd be cool to incorporate that. And so there's a lot of different technologies. And if you're watching, that's not a promise of things being delivered. It's a conversation that we're having on the feasibility of delivering that. But beyond that, there's certain IPs that we are in conversations with, David's in conversations with, and the nature of their products might allow us to do things that we've not been doing currently. I think beyond that, we've been doing some applications of our technology that we've never done before, which have really given us a ton of visibility. A good example of this would be Johnny Depp and Ridley Scott's Hyde graphic novel. We released an article about that. And what that's doing is that's sending an interesting thing about that article. I'm going to take a little side. Corey goes on side journeys. I hope you're ready to go on a side quest with me, everyone. I'm sorry. But an interesting thing about that event and that article is, again, we applied some current best practices to that article, and that article immediately ranked #1 with no context.
I've seen that.
And so because of that, a huge amount of people reached out to David directly and was like, whoa, we didn't know you were working with Johnny Depp and Ridley Scott. And whenever I say people reaching out to David, like it's people with IPs. And so that's part of the game plan that David always has in play, is showing the viability of what we do. But in terms of that specifically, that was a ash can of the upcoming graphic novel. An ash can is a preview of a comic or a graphic novel. The reason they were called ash cans is we're going to go on an even deeper side journey. I'm sorry. But the reason they call it an ash can is way back in the day, before they were going to release a comic, they would demo it with kind of like a cheap folded in half little paper pamphlet to kids. And so, the kids would get the little demos, and it would end up going home with them. And then back then you're heating with coal and wood. So the parents would, as part of the trash bin, they would crumble that up for kids. It would end up in the ash cans. That's why they're called ash cans. And they became valuable because of the nature of that. They were a disposable thing, so not very many of them exist. So ash cans in themselves are collectible because of the scarcity and the limited nature of them. And so David was really smart whenever he approached that, because the ash can in itself, because of the limited nature, is already collectible. And then let's put a collectible built into the ash can digitally. And so I haven't verified this, and I'm working on it right now, but that might be the first ash can in the history of them existing that has a digital collectible embedded into it. And so that's an interesting thing in itself. But another interesting thing about it is now the likes of Ridley Scott and Johnny Depp understand, wow, with just a QR code, I can give people an entire experience. because that QR code gave you a digital poster. But as you know, on VeVe, we have entire dioramas. We've got animated characters, we've got vehicles, we've got cars. A QR code could give you an entire interactive animated room for your movie premiere, for your upcoming story, for your novel.
Yeah.
So what David's done there, credit to David because he's just a genius about this stuff. But what that's done is it send a signal to the entertainment industry. Oh, wait, there's another way that I could be promoting this. And this actually appeals to a completely demographic of people. And the promotion itself is a collectible within that ecosystem. And so in terms of applying technologies that have never been applied in a certain way, like with as much success, that's a huge win for us. It's a really, really exciting one.
Yeah, totally get that. Really excited about that. I didn't think about that one like this, but yeah,
I hadn't
we've talked about that.
Yeah, I hadn't initially until David and our all in. We have meetings at the company where everyone at the company is in the meeting, and David and Dan kind of go, so here's what's happening, here's our wins, here's our losses, here's where we need to improve. And David sort of mentioned that in passing, that so many people had reached out because of that article doing so well and being number one. So if people are just Googling like Johnny Depp graphic novel, our article was number one. And the way we wrote that article, we're trying to shift the way we've talked about this a couple times so far, but VeVe being a gold standard for information and a trusted source of information. If we're going to do that, we also need to look at how we communicate information. And so are we just a soulless Wikipedia that's kind of just an index of information, or do we have more of a voice and more of a feel and more of a personality as a company? And so that article specifically has a little bit more of our company voice in it.
Nice. I would like to talk about like the future and a little bit about like your personal view on things. So we've talked about that VeVe now has its fifth. God, numbers sometimes in English are so hard to pronounce.
Converting.
But like the next birthday, 5-year anniversary. Where do you see, or where would you like to see VeVe 5 years from now?
My hope 5 years from now is that it's not so much that VeVe's a household name, but there's brand recognition from general people. So a VeVe logo would just be synonymous with a digital experience. That's my hope, that in 5 years, if you're out and about and you see a VeVe logo, like it's at least an identifiable thing to a random person. And a lot of work's going into that right now. And there's no flashy advertisement campaign or billboard in a singular city that's going to allow that to happen, because we want to be the place where the world collects. And so approaching this from a global perspective, I think a lot of us talk about that like it's easier than what that actually is. Like taking a company from nothing in 5 years and making it recognizable globally is a feat. And it's even a feat in this age of information. It might even be more challenging because of just the sheer amount of information in the age of information. But my hope would be in 5 years that we're seeing VeVe in more comic books outside of a direct product offering. We're seeing it not so much in like a Walmart or a Target. And that's a deeper conversation that you should have with David in terms of where David envisions VeVe as a premium destination. And so it's not that those places aren't premium, but is that where we want product to be? Like, is that who we're targeting? But that's my hope, that in 5 years, I don't have to explain what VeVe is and what a digital collectible is, because that's the interesting thing about my life. And it's a fun thing about my life. I live in a small town. I've moved back to where I grew up. And so, whenever I established a relationship with the barber here, whenever I moved here, the second haircut is the what do you do for a living haircut, Corey? Like, I
Yeah.
haven't seen you in 20 years. Where have you been? And so you kind of go through I was in the military and, I did this and I did that. And so once we evolve past that and we're talking about the what you do, it's always a complicated thing in a way to explain exactly what I do. It would be nice in 5 years if people just kind of know, because we've established those relationships, we've maintained them. And I would also hope in 5 years that our relationships that we've just continuously built, with Marvel, with Disney, with Lucasfilm, with our independent artists like your Ron English, your Jermaine Rogers, that we've continued to do right by them. And so we see more collaboration with what we're doing. In terms of, it's just a no-brainer to repost a product release that's on VeVe that's for Disney. Like, Disney's like, yeah, it's VeVe, like, just repost that, right? Yeah. But we're still in the building stages of that.
But I hope and I guess that this will not be 5 years out from now. I mean, I could see that way sooner. I mean, we had a repost.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we had a repost. Was it on the Ultraman drop? I'm not sure about that. Yeah,
that's because Subaraya's licensor is just their chef's kiss. Like, they love their product, and I think it kind of depends on how much product you have underneath that umbrella in terms of your willingness to accept risk, because that is what it. If you do it for one licensor, you do it for all your licensors, right? Like, that's another thing. Like, if Disney reposts VeVe stuff, then every other licensor in the world that exists that's under Disney is going to go, wait a minute, why aren't you reposting all of our stuff? Like, what is VeVe paying you direct? And so there's an element of that, but some of that is more explainable whenever your company is doing something of that level, right? And so that's my hope, is that we just continue to onboard, we get more amazing collectors, we keep building that community, and we keep building trust. David will keep doing his thing. I know if I'm trying to think of all the licenses we'll have in 5 years that I'll have to try to understand.
You will catch them all.
That's it.
Yeah. Then we should definitely schedule another interview for
5 years. Let's go ahead
2030 and take a look at if your wishes came to fruition. But when we talk about wishes, I mean, the VeVe community is a diehard community, really passionate. They have a lot of great and awesome ideas for like product improvement, new features, etc. I guess you guys definitely taking a look, not just through the official how is it called, where you can type in your request on your
feedback
website
widget.
Not, I guess you are also looking at X and stuff, because I mean the community kind of lives there. But that's not what I want to ask. I want to ask you. I mean, you probably have great ideas as well. You have maybe one kind of a wish list of functions and features. Maybe you would like to share with me or us what you would like to see in terms of features and improvements.
For sure. And everything I'm about to say, this is Corey's wish list. This isn't a promise for the future via VeVe, but I will tell you directly exactly what I want. And it's what I've wanted since before I worked at VeVe. Is there have been elements of this in other platforms, like HRO had trading cards, right? And we talked about, I grew up playing Magic. Like, I still play Magic. I still play Pokemon. I still play Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, for me, the top tier experience would be having like a high level TCG on the platform with the standard collectability that we have and the standard release protocols that we have on VeVe, but it's incorporated into our VeVeVerse model. So, like, you have the cards, they're playable cards, they're collectible, they're tradable, and they're buy and sellable. Like, for me, in terms of, like, if you wanted to take all of my money, that's the way I would do it. That is the thing that I would like to see in terms of a total package. So not
Yeah.
just the product, but the means to interface with that product and interface with other people using that product. I wish that we could package that some way into our VeVeVerse experience, because, you know, I play Pokemon Go, I play the Pokemon Pocket, and there's elements of all of those things that I really enjoy. And then I also play the Magic the Gathering online, and I play Magic the Gathering in real life. And so it's like, we have AR. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was some way that you could discover things in AR to collect that were
Mm-hmm.
limited in nature, or maybe even gated to locations? But wouldn't it be even cooler if those had more utility than just the utility of buying and selling the VeVeVerse? And man, I'm listing off all the utilities, which there's quite a few, but it would be cool if I could play with those too,
Yeah.
like in some kind of format. And I think that would keep me engaged for longer. The challenge features that we've released are such a step in the right direction. I was so excited to see that that was finally coming to fruition. And I think those challenge features will evolve over time to encourage more use, because those
Mm-hmm.
challenge features have increased the daily active usage on the platform by a massive degree.
Yeah.
Like the amount of time people, you need to give people a reason to log in outside of just, we have a cool thing coming,
Yeah.
you know, and there's only this many of it, so you need to come
Yeah.
buy it, kind of thing.
I mean, to touch on that, the first challenge, so I don't know how it was called, but where you post daily and visit showrooms and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so engaged in the app. I mean, I've just missed 1 point. 1 point. That was unfortunate, but yeah.
it So it's like my dream for the platform is actually kind of, it's a coalescing of a lot of the things we just talked about. Like we talked about how I wish one company would get us past the phone and more into a virtual or augmented reality,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's a contact lens, a lightweight headset, a heads up display of some kind. Like, for me, the crazy future of VeVe is an incorporation of that technology plus what I'm just talking about. So it's a lightweight, easy to interface with experience where not only am I collecting, I'm also going, hey, what's Jan up today? Hey, Jan, are you online? And being able to just talk to you in person and be like, yo, you want to, I just put together a new deck from the last series that we released. Like, I want to demo it out. You got time to play? If you win, I'll give you this card. And if you lose, I get, you know what I mean? Like, we can do
Yeah, that would
tradesies
be
on
awesome.
cards.
Yeah.
Like, I would just spend all of my time on that. I kind of wish, from a gaming perspective, because I'm a gamer too. And so you got to think how much time I spend in my chair in front of computer screens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a PC gamer. So like,
Yeah.
my free time is also in a chair in front of computer screens.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have an Omni One. You can look that up if you're watching. But I was an early investor in the Omni One gaming rig, which is it's basically, there's a chest rig, a VR headset, your handhelds, and you walk in a convex platform with
Oh, yeah,
low
yeah.
friction
Mhm.
shoes. And so I can like run in that, and I can walk in that, and I can play games and exercise at the same time. Like, I can
Yeah.
get my steps in while killing zombies. But that technology, while I have it, it's limited. Like, I can't play every single game there is logically. I could, but it would take a lot of time for me to like fix inputs. So I'm as a gamer and someone that consumes a lot of media, kind of waiting for this next adoption, this next tech wave. So I can spend more time actually engaging instead
Yeah.
of kind of engaging through a computer screen.
I mean, that would it's a little bit off topic here, right? But that would be something that would get me into gaming, because gaming never played a role in my life, never.
Yeah.
But if you're like really moving and exercising while you play a game, that would definitely get me into all of that. But Corey, we are now 1.5 hours roughly
Let's
in.
go.
Yeah, nice. Is there anything we haven't touched on where what you would like to discuss or talk about?
Not that I can think of. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's a stay tuned kind of situation. I know that seems like a cop out, but there are so many amazing people working at VeVe, and we just keep onboarding more and more amazing people. Like the latest 2 additions to our company, one of them came from Hasbro, and one of them came from the Flesh and Blood trading card game out of New Zealand, which I don't know if you're familiar with that trading card game, but we're finally really hiring people that love collecting. Like they've spent their life here, and that's another thing about, if you want to call it VeVe growing up, to get those people here, we kind of needed to have a history of proven success and legitimacy. And we've been around long enough now, and we've been doing this well enough, long enough now, that we're not just getting industry professionals that, you know, maybe they did socials at Google or something. Like they have really legitimate background skills and experience, but we're getting those people plus they collect. Like they're coming here because they love collecting and they see the future that this company promises. Because physical collecting will never go away, and it shouldn't. Like I love collecting things physically. I love the tangibility of it, but digital collecting is going to be the future of how people collect, especially this next generation that just lives their life digitally. So it's really exciting times at VeVe, and just hang with us because we're about to go through a lot of changes here in the next couple of years. It's going to be good stuff.
I'm really looking forward to that. And Corey, thank you so much. It was a pleasure and a really nice conversation. I think I've took a lot of information and knowledge with me. And for everyone out there who is still watching, you know the drill. Leave a like, leave a comment, think about following. And if you like this conversation, you will probably like this one as well. And yeah, guys, see you in the next one.